That's what I'm talking about, son. Get you some of that daggone pie.
Woo-hoo! Looky there. There's your bug-eyed big one right there.
Getting started. We're getting started.
Here's what I'm talking about. Gosh dang gorilla.
Let's go, baby. Straight meat. God, look at that biggin.
All right, welcome in everybody to the BAM Pod. I'm your host, Big Ed, and on the line tonight, I've got a gentleman who just won his first major pro event, and I couldn't be prouder to have him on the air. So thanks for coming on, Mr. Colby Pearson.
Appreciate you having me, man.
Oh man, this was awesome to be out there and be a part of this. I know you've been fishing for a long time. I do my background check on most everybody here, and he's been fishing for like more than 20 years, but he's been fishing tournaments since he was 10 years old. He's somewhere real close to 30 now. So he's, been doing this for about 20 years, and he's been fishing a lot of different events, the Apex, the One Bass. He started off fishing some of the high schools, even the high school stuff. That's how far back he's went with this. He made nationals doing that. He's fishing the Everstart, and now he's on the BAM trail. And, we couldn't be happier to have him. He's one of those guys that's coming up and really, if you ever watch this, at the end of this show, I'm going to give him a chance to give all this information out there, how you can get a hold of him, how you can follow him, how you can watch him. But he does one heck of a good job of putting out a bunch of social media, and he's an easy guy to follow, and he's really one of those guys you want to root for because of the way that he plays this game. So, Colby, let's talk about this little thing you went down and did. You came down to Lake Martinez in Arizona, a little bit of a drive for you, somewhere around 16 hours you were talking about, and went to a lake that you really haven't been to before. How was this whole thing as you're ramping up and getting ready to go down there? And, how was it going to this desert lake and fishing down there?
Oh man, it was an awesome experience. Like you said, 16-hour drive. That was daunting. Definitely had that on my mind for months leading up to the event, and was super relieved to get down to Yuma, is where we ended up staying, and get that part of the trip notched out. As far as the fishery goes, what an experience down there. It's almost like a mix between the Colorado River, the California Delta, and the jungle, because there's so many choked off backwaters, little ponds. Up here, we'd call them sloughs, but they're kind of like little backwater ponds down there. And a ton of opportunities to exhibit versatility. There's so many lures you can throw and be effective with down there. Tons of largemouth fishing, your core stuff. You want to throw a buzzbait and a frog and a swim bait, when you want to flip and punch and just everything. And it was a great experience. The tournament went obviously as good as it could go. Ended up getting the win down there. Super thankful for that. And man, it just was a great time as a whole.
Yeah, I was on the water out there, saw a bunch of different things. We were in the Fisher's Landing area of Lake Martinez, on the Colorado River. And it's something I'd never seen before. And looking at that water, like you said, there was that feeling of almost the Delta kind of ish areas, where you would see them. But then the jungle, I think, is one of the best ways you could have really put that, because we would take off and go down, and it's like, okay, you go down the slough and take the third left. And it's like, what do you mean left? It's just a slough, right? And then you would troll motor down, or you would idle back into just the jungle, open up, and all of a sudden you're in another lake out there. And it's like, holy moly, these things are great. The water clarity, that sort of thing. When you left Oregon, when I left California, I'm here in Northern California. When I left California, it was snowing. When you left up there in Oregon to head down that way, was it just cold? Was it, hey, I'm heading down in there? What was your thoughts on where these fish would be staging wise? Are they going to be in spawn, post spawn, pre-spawn? The water was so clear when we were down there. What was this for you? How did you think you were going to, and did it match when you got there?
Yeah. So, leaving Southern Oregon, I've been fishing a bunch. I'm always on the water, fished all winter long. And in the winter here, the water gets into the 30s, mid to upper 30s. It doesn't quite freeze in a lot of my reservoirs, but it's brutally tough and definitely true winter conditions. So leading up to the event up here back home, I was catching fish on, medium diving crankbaits and jerk baits and some finesse fishing and a little bit of swim baits and stuff. Definitely really early pre-spawn, more of a late winter transition. So going down there, I knew it was going to be a total flip to the script. I have fished events, pro-ams and things like that on, like, say, Lake Havasu, which is a couple hours north of Lake Martinez where we had the event. And I knew that typically those fish are going to start, first wave spawners are going to move up the first, second week of February, depending on moon phase. And then, second, third wave fish are going to move up the first week of March and things like that. So I knew that there was a really good chance that for the most part, the fish were going to be done. There would still be some stragglers on bed. And if there's a lot of population of fish in an area, then there's going to be second and third wave fish that maybe could spawn into May, even that far south. So I definitely didn't cross out the idea of spawners, but I knew that I was probably going to be predominantly targeting post-spawn fish, and that was the case. Once I got down there, the first day of the tournament, I got onto that pattern pretty quick and then was able to pretty much take it and run, which was really beneficial on the first day, adjusting and getting hitting the ground running, if you will.
Yeah. When you got out there, were you surprised to see how clear that water was? Because I think for me, that was one of the things that I being a river system, and I'm a little more used to the Delta and that sort of thing because it's right here in Northern California, but it's like I didn't expect that water to be quite that clear. And the other thing is did you ever have any problems with or run into the zebra mussel issues that are down there?
Hey everybody, thanks for tuning to the BAM Pod tonight. I hope you're enjoying the show. But right now we're going to take a commercial break and talk to you a little bit about Excel Marketing LLC. They're your local TV expert and they have something to tell you about Dish TV. If technology, value, and customer satisfaction are important to you, then it's time to cut the cable cord once and for all. Upgrade your TV experience and start saving with Dish today. Call Excel Marketing LLC at 209-542-4129 or visit them on the web at excel.getdish.com. They're Excel Marketing LLC, your locally owned, operated, and trusted satellite TV experts. Now, back to the BAM Pod.
As far as water clarity goes, it's funny because in Fisher's Landing, where we actually launched the event out of, and a few guys in the top 10 ended up fishing, the water was really clear. It was probably what I'd say maybe 12-foot clarity, something like that. But I was actually surprised. A lot of the backwaters that I found success in, they weren't even as clear as I had prepared for. I was typically fishing 2 to 4 foot clarity at the most. So I thought it was going to be a 4 to 6 foot clarity on average there. But so I was adversely surprised that, hey, it's not quite as clear as I thought it was, but it kind of worked in my favor because I was able to, I guess, utilize some more reaction techniques that tend to be more favorable and a little bit of stain. So that was beneficial, in kind of that regard for sure. As far as the quagga zebra mussel situation, I never really saw any. Obviously when I got home, I made sure that my boat was tended to and fully clean because I definitely don't want those anywhere near the Northwest. But I did notice my line getting frayed more consistently. I was throwing the first day or two, I was throwing a spinnerbait a lot around and in the cover. So my line was fraying at a more aggressive rate than I would say just what tules or bushes would make it do. So I know that I was fishing around some stuff that was coated with zebra mussels. I'd bring that spinnerbait or something through some somewhat heavy cover and I would notice those little abrasions. And I know that that's, a characteristic that those mussels are notorious for.
Yeah, definitely. We were out there and we had talked to a few people that said basically the same thing. It's like, it's not so much that I saw them, but I noticed that if I touched a tree or got near something that had some kind of structure to it, my line would be frayed. And anytime I set the hook, they would lose fish or break them off or, snap the line pretty easily at that point. And it's just one of those, I know that it's, I didn't really see any. I have no idea what I was looking for though either. So it's one of, those. But the other side of that is some of the things you just said right there with, the baits you're using in that. Now, being a West Coast guy, and I know some of the ways you fished, I've, looked back at some of your, history that you're a big fish bait guy, like, or a big fishing, you like swim baits, you like big baits, you like that. But at the same time, I noticed you have a real tendency to go, I mean, and I guess it's true West Coast style, right? Full big fish and then, or big baits, and then all the way back down to small baits. When you went down and you're heading into water like that, desert water, like I said, I'd never seen the way this was before. I'd never seen anything like this. Like you said, the way you described it was perfect. But how was this? Were you prepared to throw like, hey, I'm gonna go throw some big swim baits? I got a little bit of stain, I got a little bit off color. Was swim baits on your mind? Was it I'm gonna throw, finesse, I'm gonna throw drop shots, I'm gonna throw, what was it that you were just like, hey, this is what I'm going to target, but when you got there, did it change?
Yeah, for sure. Like you mentioned, I'm a total big bait, big fish guy, but my favorite right? Like my second favorite / favorite thing is definitely throwing a spinning rod, definitely throwing finesse gear. I'm equally comfortable doing both. In having bass fish tournaments for 20 years, I mean, there isn't really any technique that I'm not familiar with. I mean, I watch all the live footage from national circuits, and if someone's, you got a Kyoya Fujita throwing like a Sakamata shad on a hover strolling rig, guess what? The next time I hit the lake, I'm out on the lake throwing a hover strolling rig and learning everything cutting edge that I can in the industry. So I never like let myself get so comfortable that I'm isolated from prevalent techniques that I need to apply. But yeah, I definitely have an affinity towards big baits and then tiny finesse baits, especially with the spinning rod.
Yeah.
As far as preparing for that event, I typically will have swim baits tied on every single locale that I go. The only time frame I maybe get away from the swim baits, I'd say, is like the middle of summer. Not to say that they don't work, but I don't find them to be as viable as other techniques I may need to utilize. That being said, pre-spawn, post-spawn, in the fall, and in the wintertime, man, swim baits are always on the deck, at least of some sort. So it wasn't a ton different from what I had prepared for. I'd watched a pretty good amount of media on the fishery, got a decent lay of the land, obviously studied a bunch of mapping resources and things. So luckily, some of the things that I had tied on at blast off, or before the tournament, were things I was able to translate into being effective during the event. One of those baits was a swim bait. It was a KGB shad, which is a 7-inch chop style glide. Definitely put some fish in the boat, and I did really well on a spinner bait as well. I did catch some fish flipping, although not a ton. And, I guess my strategy going into these Pro Tour events, hybrid format, I always want to rig a lot of rods. That way I can adjust on the fly, kind of what my instincts are telling me, and then make those micro adjustments and make sure that I'm capitalizing on my time.
You said that in there, the hybrid form. How do you like this setup that you went into? Bam, I don't they haven't completely flipped the script from what Wild West was doing, but the hybrid, where hey, you can qualify with weight, you can qualify with numbers, you can get to the top 10, and then it all changes and the points all drop off. You got no weight, everybody goes out with 0 in the last day. How is this form really work for you? I know you're a guy that likes to, I think most fishermen, and well, maybe most of the pro guys now that are out there, they really like to fish to their strengths. If you have a fishery like this and you're not able to just go out there completely going, you know what, this is what I'm doing. How do you adjust to that? And how do you like this form? I mean, changing up, like you said, oh, I gotta have a bunch of rods so I can change up. Has this format been good for you?
Yeah, I mean, the format's excellent for me. The way I would describe what the BAM Pro Tour is bringing to the table would be carrying the torch, right? We didn't reinvent the script here with this circuit, although they've applied the same strategies in the aspect of the format. It's super fun, engaging, intuitive on the water. There's a lot of pressure on the angler, and you really get to see what everyone's made of. Who's really resilient, who's strategic, who's, going to be versatile on the fly and adjust given the conditions, So for me, the format works excellent. I think what people would need to notice about myself is that coming from Oregon, like I don't have a home tournament fishery, so I'm always fishing in someone's backyard. So I've had to become like as good as I can possibly be at fishing and catching fish, right? Like I don't have a breadwinner lake that I can show up to and have 5 or 6 pro-ams and kind of like make my living, if you will. So I'm always traveling. A close fishery to me would be something like a Shasta, which is 3 hours away. A lot of people think I'm like a Columbia River local. Man, the Columbia River is 6 or 7 hours away, at least the sections that typically have big events. So I'm always on the road. So adjusting on the fly with very little practice or none is something that I've become very, very accustomed to the last 6 years fishing professional events out west.
Tell a new fish story with Garmin EchoMap Ultra 2 chart plotters in 10 and 12-inch models featuring traditional clear view, side view sonar. Heard about Garmin's Live Scope, live scanning sonar? EchoMap Ultra 2 is compatible with that also. You can even capture your favorite and best fish catches with the new screen recording feature. What more could you want? How about built-in Garmin Navionics, inland and coastal mapping? Wireless networking? Check and check. EchoMap Ultra 2. Check it out at Garmin.com or shop your local Garmin dealer.
Well, I can definitely say that you've done a good job at that. And winning this event proves that you're willing to adjust and make the proper adjustments to do that. So having that as a background has seemed to really pay off for you. When you're down there and you have to finesse fish, when it comes to clear water like that, what's your line and everything that you're using on that? I mean, that is, I could not believe in some of those. Now, I know you're talking about, you were fishing a lot of stained water, but I mean, we'd get into some of those backwaters and it was crazy how clear that water was. Is there a special setup you use for stuff like that? Or are you just, hey, this is my normal way I do it and I don't, buy into the whole line thing?
Yeah. I mean, to answer the question, there is a way that I do it, and I don't always buy into the line thing. And I tend to err on the side of using the lightest equipment possible.
Okay.
I pick up a spinning rod when I need to manufacture bites. It's not something that I'm doing to just like cover water or, I love doing it and I'm comfortable doing it, but it stems from productivity. So when I pick up a spinning rod, it's like get bit mode and things, the wheels are about to start turning, so I'm going to typically pick up a spinning rod that is, as finessey as possible. I'll use bait casters for every other tool, but when I pick up that spinning rod, it is something that's going to put fish in the boat in short order. And a lot of times it is big fish too, but my standard setup spinning rod fishing across the entire region, I'd say most often is like a 7'3" to 7'6" light or medium light action spinning rod. I use 4,000 size reels exclusively. That is a strategic maneuver based in line pickup. A larger arbor spinning reel is going to pick up closer to 40 inches of line per crank. You divide that by foot, 12 inches. Okay, so I'm getting over 3 feet per crank. I can crank twice and move my lure 6 feet.
Wow.
So I can put a lot of pressure on those fish. I can get them away from cover, even though it is light tackle. I can still kind of like lay the hammer to them and then pull them out of some stuff. My preferred braided line, and all my spinning rods have a braided main line. I've converted probably 10 years ago, and that's been my system. I typically 9 times out of 10 use a 5-pound braid, which guys are always tripping out on. The diameter of it is probably 1 pound diameter. It's literally like thread. And, it's not the strongest thing in the world, but if you're going to put 5 pounds of pressure onto a spinning rod, that's a pretty exorbitant amount of pressure. Yeah. And spinning rods are kind of made to distribute the tension. So that's actually pretty hard to do, to put a true 5 pounds of pressure. The 5-pound braid I can tie to a larger leader, a 6 or an 8-pound, as long as the diameter discrepancy to my leader material isn't too great. So I have really, really great results with that 5-pound braid. If I'm in a heavier cover situation, I do use 10-pound braid, and I do have a utility for 15-pound braid, but it's really rare. Most of the time, I'm a 5-pound braid guy to about a 6-pound fluorocarbon leader. At Martinez, I was using 10-pound braid to an 8-pound leader. And I always run a Cortland braid. Cortland Master braid is my go-to.
Oh, okay. Good stuff for sure. I like that. I've used that, and I really like that. Yeah. When you're out there, you're throwing your spinner baits, you're going through that. Now, I know you said you did your research out there on that body of water, saw what's in there. There were some big fish in that water. I know that the average size was somewhere in that 3 to 4 pound range, which is that's good weight right there. I mean, I think Zach Thompson said it the best when he's up there and he goes, hey, he dropped 22 pounds on the scales 2 days in a row. That's, for 5 fish, that's a pretty good average right there. If you can consistently get that out of that body of water. When you were looking and you were doing your research, were you seeing, it's like, hey, I need to have good weight to be down there. How were you preparing for the fish size that was in there?
Yeah. So, I mean, it was pretty clear, looking at tournament results and kind of just the aura that surrounds the fishery, that it was if it was really tough, it was like a 16, 18 pound show. But
Mm-hmm.
a lot of the local events down there were 24 to 28 pounds. So I knew that a lot of those fish had gone, they had spawned, done their thing, they're going to be thinner. And that's kind of what we ran into. So I had a feeling that 20-pound mark, which on most core largemouth fisheries is always going to be a strong bag, right? Your Clear Lakes, out of the heyday season, outside of the spring, typically 20 pounds is a good check size bag. Same thing with the California Delta, in most other largemouth fisheries. So as far as preparing for that size of fish, I can't say that I did anything too different, because as a tournament bass fisherman, that's what I fish for, is 3 to 5 pound largemouth on a regular basis. And then if I can afford myself the opportunity to fish for some bigger ones, man, that's even better.
That's yeah. I was just. Did you happen to run across any good fish while you're down there? I mean, plus I talked. We sat on and we watched Mark Pilgrim fish for a while, and he was sitting on one that I saw, and I would say it was 10 plus easy, probably closer to 12 or 13. When we were in the camera boat, it's like, oh my, and he goes, yeah, that's the one I'm waiting for to lock up. Did you run across any of those? Because I heard a lot of guys were seeing them. I'm up on the stage. I didn't see a ton of those come through. So I know they must have been harder to catch, but did you run into any of them out there?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say that I kind of like cut my teeth in the event catching those 3 to 5 pound caliber fish.
Hmm.
Although by the final day, I qualified by keepers, and guys who
Yeah.
qualify by keepers typically aren't on a tournament winning pattern. It could happen, but that's not the norm, at least from my experience seeing these Pro Tour events.
Right.
So I scrapped my game plan on the final day. I also couldn't access my water because, the fans
Yeah.
watching, maybe they didn't know that the water dropped about 16 inches from the first day to the final day. So I just kind of went looking. Bed fishing wasn't my pattern by any means, but
Hmm.
I kept my eyes open, head on a swivel, and I just went fishing the final day. I covered a ton of ground. 60% of it was dud water. It was totally unproductive, but there was 40% that did have fish, and obviously I was successful in those zones that I had found. But there was a point in the day at about 10 that I did find a definite like double digit plus fish. Something that could have been easily been 11 or 12 pounds. And she was locked up on a bed, and I did try to catch her, and I unfortunately made some mistakes that made it unable for me to capture that fish. But I accidentally caught the male. I threw an open hook on the bed. She was really, really engaged, and she was, in the process of about to be hooked. And he kind of nudged her and ended up eating the bait to the point that I was completely unable to shake him off. But he made it to weigh in. She did not, unfortunately. Although I did get a taste of the size potential that Martinez could facilitate.
Oh, sure. Yeah, because your final day was what, 16? I'm never gonna
Yeah,
remember all of it.
1629, I
16,
think,
20.
is the
Yeah.
numbers.
Yeah. So that was, I mean, and how big was the fish how big was the male? In that three to five
The
pound
male was
range?
3.25, 3.5 pounds. So he was
Yeah.
definitely tough to want to throw back, and the female that I found, man, she had two males on her. I really thought she was
Oh,
going to circle back and tack back on, but I could see that those fish down there, they're pretty cultured, they're not the
right.
easiest fish to catch. And, I knew it was a 50-50 shot whether she'd come back, and she didn't. And, I never really focused on the day that
Yeah.
the idea that that fish was going to affect me negatively, which is, that's a testament to fishing a lot of events, man. It's
Right.
in the past 5-6 years ago, that could easily put a damper on my day. I would have been down in the dumps and not been able to recover from that. But I just all day I was just grinding, poking around, enjoying the nice desert weather where, back home,
Right.
like you said, it was snowing off and on. So it was just an enjoyable final day where I really got to kind of like peel back the layers of the fishery and let my mind kind of explore. And honestly, that's when I fish the best.
At any point during the day, was it, I mean, you're sitting there, even if it's the last part of the day, you've got 15, 16 pounds in the boat. at any point was it just like, I really think I've got a shot at winning this? I'd love to know what it, when that might kick in your mind.
Um, I mean, I knew I had a shot at winning it all day just by the simple fact that I was fishing the event. It's the top
Right.
10 is a place that I found myself a lot of times, and I just know how it goes. I know it takes a matter of minutes. However long it takes you to make 5 casts is however long it takes you to put 5 big ones in the boat,
Right.
So that's really the way that I operate. I was nose to the grindstone all day. I had no fish at 10. I was just exploring and getting stuck and not able to get in my areas and kind of scrambling around. But the wheels were definitely not off the bus. I was collected. Started to put together a limit. I had 9 or 10 pounds at maybe 11 or 12. Kept chipping away, going into new backwaters, poking my boat in places that maybe doesn't necessarily belong in terms of a 21-foot boat in some real tight areas. Yeah, I caught the fish that ended up sealing the deal at 222.
Wow.
So I had a 315 or 330 check-in, whatever it ended up being. Quite a ways upriver, with some navigational hurdles to jump in terms of just distance and sandbars and potential, driver error, little things like that. But yeah, I mean, I afforded myself a few extra minutes to stop in fishers and fish around outside of the off limit zone and see if I could get a bonus fish, but I didn't think that I had won with the weight that I had. I knew it was a respectable bag and I knew I was 1 to 2 bites away. I thought 19 or 20 pounds was really going to be the number that we would have needed to get to. But with the amount of pressure that the fishery was experienced from us, as well as some tournaments leading up to our tournament, turns out obviously 1629 was a very solid bag on the final day.
Yeah, it definitely was, and it was enough to take the win. So that's just a positive. That's all you can really look for and do, right? I mean, obviously putting your nose to the grindstone, just going out there, doing what you did, forgetting about the first part of it. What did you made the top 10. And and I'm going to get into something else a little in just a second, but you made the top 10 and you're going out there and all of a sudden you're back down to 0. Do you like that format as far as, hey, you know what? Now it's just go out and do the best you can, or would you have liked to have seen your progressive weight go on?
No, I like the format because that's the game.
Cool.
You know what I mean? At the end of the day, I've been playing this Pro Tour hybrid format game for 3 years. And if it was a 5-fish compounding weight format, I would have fished the entire first 2 days of the event different. I noticed a pattern that I thought could qualify me by keepers, and I ran it into the ground, and I was able to squeak in. I got the 10th spot, kind of miraculously. It almost wasn't enough, I did lose some fish the first 2 days that would have enabled me to get in pretty free and clear, but I scraped in that 10th spot, which is awesome. But, it's part of the game. The weight zeroing on the final day allows for a true Western shootout,
Indeed.
So yeah, I prefer it. There's tournaments that I've qualified in with a lot of weight, like Trinity Lake, for an example. I had, 50 pounds almost for 2 days. There's days where I'd like to carry that weight in, but at the end of the day, that's the format, that's the game. And I've played the game by keepers. I've played the game by weight, and regardless, that final day 0, man, that's the equalizer, and that's what keeps it interesting, and that's the game we play.
Yeah, that's I fully agree with you on that. That's the one. I love that format myself. I'm glad that when Mark went on with this is the way he went. And I've seen that. I thought the body of water was great. I thought the people down there in Yuma were great to be around. The crowd that came out, the people that showed up. I think everybody out there was like, I'd love to come back down this way again. Even though it was a long drive, you are way down by the Mexican border, you're California or Arizona border, you're down there. It's a long ways south. How did you feel? How do you feel about going back down that way with these tours like this? I mean, the West Coast is big. I think that's one of the things that people maybe don't understand sometimes is how far you have to go to do these things. Are you one that's, I mean, you drove 16 hours, so apparently you're a guy who's willing to go where we go. But is it something you like, or is there a lake? You say you fish Southern Oregon. Is there a lake right there that you would love to see us go to?
Hi, this is Josh McMurray. I'm the city manager for the city of Oakley. We're located on the Delta. We have a beautiful shoreline, and we really want to promote the city as the gateway to the Delta and showcase everything that we have to offer. We have a beautiful downtown that's expanding, brand new restaurants. What we're trying to do is build that brand to make sure that people know that you can come to Oakley and you can do everything that you want associated with the Delta, and you can still stay here, eat here, and have a good time in a very family-friendly and safe environment.
Yeah, so I mean, 16 hours for me, close to 1,000 miles. I think the only angler in the Pro Tour that we fish that went further was Jake Boomer, and man, he's got a mountain of a mileage gap on me. I mean, he's up towards Spokane, which is about 8 or 9 hours north of me, even further. So props to Jake for making that journey. I like traveling. I love fishing new fisheries. I like going to obscure fisheries that a lot of guys in the field haven't been to. I feel like I'm adaptable and can launch my boat and compete against a multitude of caliber of anglers. Like, I feel very comfortable doing that, and honestly kind of prefer it. If we were to go back to Martinez, man, I would love to do that. Regardless of the distance, it's just such a cool fishery and so dynamic that, I thoroughly enjoyed myself, and I would love to go spend more time down there, 100%. As far as regional fisheries that I hope the circuit can go to in the future, I mean, we had an event at Trinity in 2022, and it was like 3-day combined total. If you were to count the winner's first 2 days and the final day, I think he would have been really close to 100 pounds, right, for best 15 fish. So 5 fish limit, 3 days in a row. He was bringing in, really high 20s, well into the 30s every day. So that's a phenomenal fishery. There's a fishery on the Oregon coast, 10 Mile Lake. It's actually 2 lakes that are connected by a narrow canal. That would be, in my opinion, the most epic Pro Tour fishery, because again, it's so dynamic and so layered. There's so many patterns that could play. There's 2 different lakes connected by a canal. You have to constitute the time traveling to and from. Each side's a little bit different. There's lots of arms, and guys could easily spread out. It's a lake in Oregon. They have 70 to 90 boat tournaments on occasionally. So it definitely can facilitate the size of our field. And I think it would be so cool, to see that fishery kind of exemplified at more of like a upper regional national level. I think the anglers would love it too. So that's an example. I'm super stoked to go back to the Columbia River. This summer they have a Pro-Am as well as a Pro Tour event out of the Boardman pool. I hope in the future they go fish some other pools, because like Cascade Locks closer to Portland in that April vicinity, it's like a 24 to 26 pound all smallmouth 50 fish day, absolute slugfest, right? So those would be a couple fisheries I would really, really love to see the BAM Pro Tour go to, where we could showcase Western fisheries at their highest capacity. And I mean, something like that's going to boost tourism. It's going to boost awareness. It's going to get people involved in fishing in a region where otherwise maybe they aren't as much. So definitely some exciting stuff I hope to see happen.
Well, we might have to just make some whispers into old Mark's ears there and see if we can't get him to, look around and check out some of these areas. Because I think everybody on tour, that's what they are excited about with this event, kind of restarting, maybe not restarting, but starting up and going, hey, you know what, we're going to make it a point to go to some of these waters that other guys can go to that they haven't seen before. So, there's the After Bay and things like that people don't normally go to on a regular basis for tournaments. The next one coming up, Lake Almanor, is another lake that I think there's a lot of people excited about and I'm excited for. It is, it's a definite game changer at that lake. We saw some great weights up there. And it's going to be interesting to see how well that one goes. Again, smallmouth. And what's funny? When you said smallmouth, when I think Oregon, that's what I think is a lot of smallmouth fishing. Maybe just because of the people that I know that have lived up there, that's what they target. But is that a staple for you? Do you really like fishing for smallmouth compared to largemouth, or are you just, as a tournament angler, I'm sure you don't really care. You go after what's out there, but is that something you prefer?
Yeah, I like largemouth and I love competing. I love tournament fishing more than anything. But I'm a freaking obsessed with smallmouth. Like that's my bread and butter. That's like my lifeline. I'll be
Yeah.
also the first person to tell you those Almanor smallmouth, they don't act like smallmouth on a regional basis. I mean, anywhere that they're smelt, it totally is a new layer on how those fish behave. So I kind of have a little bit of a bone to pick with Almanor. I've made top tens there, and I've also had some of my worst tournament finishes there. So this
Wow.
next tournament we have coming up, I'm going to really, really prioritize ensuring I can get a top 10 down there. And I really want to win at Almanor because just of what it would mean to me, having it favor me in the past and also having it beat the heck out of me in the past.
That, that's awesome. I love to hear that, it's like I want that lake. I just want it. It's a good one. I mean, there's a guy, I mean, Mark Pilgrim lives right on that water, and I'm sure he's kind of in that same mode. It's like I really got to win one up here. Being a guide
Yeah.
out there and being on it. I feel like I don't know. I love to hear that from you guys, these top anglers out here on the West, that it's like, there are lakes out here that we just want to go to because they are a nemesis, or it's like, it's almost like I have a battle with this place because of this. I mean, I usually hear, we hear a lot about, the Delta, we hear about Clear Lake, we hear about those things, but there are so many other lakes out there that are just phenomenal fisheries out here in the West, like you said, that don't get the exposure that they should get. The areas, the places, the towns that they live by. We went to Yuma, Arizona. I'd never been there. That was a great, I mean, the crowd that came out, right there at Fisher's Landing, the crowd that came out. I've never been passed on the highway by a side by side, living in California, but I can't say that anymore because in Arizona that happened. It was just really neat to see the different areas and to go see, like, hey, what's up in Oregon? What's up? I think that's really impressive, and to give you guys the opportunity to go do this has been something that I think has been needed out here a lot. And I think the larger it grows, the better it'll be. But like you said, going to and seeing all the tourism and seeing these little towns that can show off some of these great lakes.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, for that matter, man, I hope we've talked in the past with other circuits about the Idahos and things like that. Like, I want to
Right.
fish Coeur d'Alene. I want to fish Pend Oreille. If we can have an event on Oahe, we need to probably get up to Potholes. I want to go to Phoenix. I want to go fish, whether it's Roosevelt, Pleasant, or Saguaro, any of those fisheries, I'm in. I'm so excited to go adventure into some of these other less prominent Western fisheries that really can showcase what this region has to offer in terms of fish size and tournament water quality.
I think that the other thing it will really do is, back east, when you're on an FLW, or I mean, or an MLF, or you're on a Bassmaster circuit, these guys are traveling, like the furthest they travel is up to the Great Lakes and that sort of thing. Nobody really realizes how big it is out here in the West, how many lakes there are, how much there is to cover. And we need that kind of coverage to show people that you can make, there's a lot of lakes to go to.
Correct.
It is not a small area that we live in. It's not just Clear Lake. It's not just the Delta. There is a lot more to go off of out here. And I think we're slowly but surely doing that. A guy like yourself, showing off the show, what you can do and the way that it can be done out here in the West Coast. I'm I'm taken aback by that as to what that does for your credentials of saying this is and these are some of the best guys. And I say it all the time. Yes, you're the best in the West. Um, but I think it says more than that when people start to see what we have to offer out here. Going forward, you did a great job there. You got Almanor coming up. We do have Clear Lake. We do have the Delta. We just have all these great fisheries coming up. What are you, besides, the whole confrontation with Almanor, is there one that you're really looking forward to as far as, you know, this is a body of water I've been waiting for, or I wanted to see? And what is your, when does your best, I mean, when does your best fishing come out of you? What is it that hey, I can't wait till I can do this? And what is that?
Yeah. So, I mean, I'd say the two events I have my sights set on are definitely Almanor and the Columbia River. Almanor, obviously, because I have a personal vendetta against it, and I want to hurt those smallmouth down there so bad. And, but honestly, the event that means probably the most to me is the Columbia River. I've probably made 4 or 5 top tens. I've fished more Sundays on that fishery than any other fishery out west. So I've been so close. That's one that kind of like is an installment in my mind of like, all right, dude, like I've led going into the final day of pro-ams on this river. Like it's time for me to take one up there. So it would mean a lot to be successful on the Columbia. Obviously smallmouth fishing. I love smallmouth. So that definitely would, be what I'd say. Columbia River, number one, definitely gonna be really, really working as hard as I can on Almanor. To help that fishery shine, but also at the expense of a 15 or so smallmouth bass.
Well, with with Martinez being so far away, you didn't really get pre-fish time. You kind of had to go in, there's a cutoff. There's a cutoff on the Pro Tour, so you can't be on the water for any time. But you can't just run down there early and go see it.
Yeah, no way.
Some of these other ones coming up, you talked about, only a 2-hour, 3-hour, these drives. Are you going to do more of that? You going to travel a little bit more and go spend some time before the cutoffs?
Yeah, I mean, I'll make it to probably the next 3 Pro Tour events at least once or twice to pre-practice. Having that 30-day off limits really makes some aspects of pre-practicing a little bit irrelevant. It could even hurt you. Although, I'll be down there looking around, more so getting lay of the land and figuring out a little bit of fish behavior, perspective water clarities, and getting my waypoints dialed in. And I do a lot of map work, do a lot of graphing. I do my own topographical maps, right? Like anything I can do to just get a little bit of an advantage.
Well, and that's basically what I was, going to kind of leading to is that, you have a 30-day off limit. So, does it make a difference to be out there other than to just do what you just talked about? Hey, I'm not really going to fish as much as you're going to just see something for maybe the first time, maybe, for many times, like you said, the Columbia River, how many times you've made it to the Sunday on that one, Almanor, when you go and you're just looking at that, because there are guys who, are out here, there's people out here fishing and they just, they want to go pre-fish for everything and make it. But when you're on this level, we cut off 30 days. You can't do it. Do you really feel like that makes a difference as far as these fish are going to be, are they going to be completely different from the time you get there? And do you really go out and fish at all when you go not, I don't want to say pre-fish, but pre-practice? Or are you just doing the mapping and just looking at the body of water?
I mean, it depends on conditions. If it's an event where mapping something offshore isn't going to be essential, then obviously you might benefit more from actually fishing and hitting the ground and running and trying lures and colors and things. I'd say enter it with that in mind, and then just kind of try to be like intuitive to how the event's going to end up setting up. If it's a bed fishing tournament, I'm going to go look for a certain type of bottom composition and substrate. I'm going to look for certain angled banks that are a little bit maybe shallower with deep water access, easy for a fish to post up into, see if they're going to spawn around stumps, rocks, etc., and then things of that nature, right? Now, all of a sudden, fast forward to post spawn, it's like, okay, when they're exiting those spawning bays, where are they essentially going to go to? What's first stop? What's second stop? By the time they get into full-blown summer pattern, where are they going to live the rest of their life until they transition fall and winter, right? So, I mean, I kind of just look at it in the ratios based off seasonality and get a good lay of the land more so. Fishing is on the day, it's just fishing. 30-day off limits is going to change a lot, almost always.
Yeah.
But you can still see what colors they like. You can still see what their forage base is generally made up of. They eat a lot of crawdads. Do they eat a ton of smelt? Is there trout, kokanee, salmon, shad, etc.? Do they eat baby perch like they do on the Columbia? There's just a lot of layers. So if you can enter it with an open frame of mind and you can kind of like have a forward thinking mentality of how you could parlay your findings into success in the event, then it's great. But if you're the guy who says, oh, this is what they're eating, I'm only going to fish this one bay the whole event, and then the water temperature increases 22 degrees and gets dirty and there's carp everywhere, okay, well, probably not going to work so good. But if you can go see and do and then interpret and then translate and adjust, then of course it's going to pay big dividends.
I kind of want to ask this question, not as anything other than just, now that you've won an event, did it tell you anything about how, like, for every event you go out and you put in the work and you're trying to win them all. I get that. Is there a time that you just look back and goes, wow, I now know what it takes to win and how much maybe more I have to put into it, or the effort has to go up, or are you just in that mentality of, you know what, just go out and keep doing what I've been doing and it falls into place?
I've kind of like psychoanalyzed the art of winning a million
Right.
times over. It's taken me a long time to win at a professional level, longer than I thought maybe it would have taken, given the amount of energy I put into it, because I really put in everything. Everything is into
Oh,
it.
yeah.
So it's never been a matter of like, I have to try harder. I've always felt like my mechanical skills, my decision making, capitalization, my head's always in the right place. Sometimes I probably overcomplicate it. But I've definitely tried to like recenter in my life in terms of what strategies I'm applying day to day to make me more dangerous on the water. So, I mean, it's everything from fitness to diet to surrounding myself with a positive and competitive, natured peers or environment, if I can. It's essentially studying people who've been successful in other industries, whether it's business or sports. You listen to the teachings of like your Kobe Bryants, your Mike Tysons, among other incredible athletes over history. And a lot of what they've done to become the caliber of competitors that they are doesn't exactly coincide with the skill that they need to apply in their sport. It's more about mental strategy, diligence, consistency, and then essentially output. So for me, it's really been growing as a person, and then inherently growing as an angler, putting everything into every moment on the water and holding myself accountable for that growth. I hired my supervisor a couple of years ago. I've been with a certain company for a while and have a good rapport with them, and I wanted to focus on fishing. And I hired her and said, hey, in a couple of years, I'll probably reconsider my decision and I'll probably get back to my old position in a different capacity or location. And then that way I can make more money and things. And then, a couple of years was up, and we were having a meeting last week, and she was like, where do you stand on that? You just turned 30. Are you going to transition back into the business side of things? And I said, honestly, I think that putting an expiration date on my goals was the biggest form of sabotage that I didn't realize that I was doing. Is I always had something to fall back on that I felt really comfortable doing. And the week before I went down to Martinez, I told her that, no matter what, I'm probably going to die trying, and I'm never going to give up, and I love it. And it's going to work out. And I know it's going to work out. And as soon as I kind of like extinguish those doubts, then I go to the next event and win. So it's just kind of like, it's been a lot of personal growth. It's been a lot of checks and balances, sacrificing everything to get to this point. And then now that I've won, I'm entering events with the confidence, knowing that like, I always have something I can fall back on, but I don't have to, and I'm just gonna make this work. You know what I mean? And I just have a lot of faith in that. So it's a really good place to be. People ask, how does it feel? And I said, it feels like I've done something I've known I could do since I was probably 12 years old. So I just want to keep doing it all the time. And my goals they're big, man. I want to go do it national. I want to do it full time. My best friend, Jacob Wall, he's a BPT pro, super successful, killing it in every capacity, from marketing to personability to on the water performances and things of that nature. So, I got to go fish with my bud someday. So, we're just going to work every day till that's the reality.
Wow. I mean, I can tell you right now that you're probably only the second person I've ever heard that talks that way about how you changed your entire career around not just the fishing, but I need to change my life and how I approach all of that. And the only other person I've heard talk that way is Ben Gary Klein. Um, so it's good company that you're riding in when you're talking that way. I mean, this is a guy who was on here going, I like to set up and make sure that my strong side is the right side. So I always make sure I'm set to fish on. I mean, just the way he thinks about it is just what you said right there, is that the way you focus, the way you're looking at life in general, what you eat, everything about it, that was impressive to hear, man. And I congratulations on being where you're at right now. And I hope that you get to go forward even further. I hope that we get to stay here in the West Coast, and that you don't have to be national, but I would love to see that you can make it that far.
Yeah,
We
100%. And I mean, to be honest with you, the BAM Pro Tour is the platform that I identified that could assist me in achieving that goal.
Mhm.
Obviously, being affiliated with a national publication is huge. The media reach is massive, all things considered, and the format I know I'm successful in, and I feel like it's somewhere that I can generate funds. As an angler, it's super important for me to be fishing for 100% payout. You know what I mean? A stable pay throughout the field that's manageable to keep showing up
Mhm.
every time. I like to manage my fishing like I manage a business, which is what I've done my whole adult life. And
Nice.
definitely looking into the fiscal aspects of the platform as well as the media reach. As soon as I really sat down and crunched the numbers and looked into it, I really decided that like the BAM Pro Tour is where I need to take my business to grow myself, my platform, and my fishing.
Yeah, I mean, what Mark's doing, and I feel like as I look around, he gave me the opportunity to be on the stage, to be on this here, and I did the same thing. I looked at it and said, "This is what I want to attach myself to. This is what I want to be a part of." And seeing anglers like yourself out there and doing what you're doing and the way you're doing and the way you're approaching it, and that's going to lead us up to what we talked about before it even started, is that we've got about 10 more minutes of this show right now, and everybody that's listened right now has listened to an angler who just became, well, let me say this. You just became an angler. You've always been a very solid angler. You've always been a very good angler, but you just now painted a big target on your back. And that's got to feel good and bad at the same time. Like, you're not just that guy that can get close to it. You've done it now. You are you are just like a Marine. There is no ex-champions. There is only former champions. And you got to go out and get another championship to keep going. But you're always going to be a champion now. And there's guys out there looking up there going, man, this is Colby Pearson. He is a champ, and I got to fight for this now. How does that part make you feel, just reaching that finally over that goal that you've been searching for so long?
It feels amazing in the aspect of I've chased guys with targets on their back my whole life, So to have one on my back, comfortable, it's good. Anglers will hold other anglers accountable for their own growth at this level, right?
100%.
So the final day blast off, I'm looking at the Ish Monroes and the Greg Gutierrez's, Zach Thompson, Nick Cloutier, Bill O'Shin's, guys I really, really, really respect and put on a pedestal. And, I'm chasing them and they have that target because they've earned it. You know what I mean?
Right.
So to have earned that target, I'll wear it with pride. I'll wear it as long as I can wear it for. And I'd wear it for forever if they let me. I don't think that they will, you know what I mean? Or want that to be the case. But at the end of the day, I'm going to hold them to a caliber of angler and they're going to hold me to a caliber of angler, and we're going to all grow together. Right. So it feels great. I don't
Yeah,
want to feel any other way. So I'm going to fight for
it. And that's really what I'm getting to on that, is that now it gives you that fire. It's in you now that, hey, you know what? I've done it once now. I can absolutely do it again. And like you said, these guys are so good, and they're going to keep you there, and they're going to keep you getting better. And I think whether you're on the West Coast or whether you're national, that's the thing that is going on everywhere that I hear, is the camaraderie and the brotherhood that's out there. That the family value that's in fishing is that, hey, you want to be the best, you got to prove it every time, but we're here to make you prove it. And these guys are going to do that. Now, if you're
Yeah,
listening
that's
right
it, man.
now, if you're listening right now, you might be wondering, this guy just dropped all this information. He's, he's a champion. If you're on the West Coast, you probably know exactly who we've been talking to. Colby Pearson's name has been out there for a long time. He's been doing this a long time, and making waves out there. And he just made the biggest splash of his life. But for everybody else out there that doesn't really know who he is, and you want to know who he is, tell them who you are. Give them how they can watch you, how they can follow you, how they can get a hold of you, how they can get out there, and tell them who's backed you this entire time. Give them some of your sponsors, and this is your time, man. Tell everybody in the world who Colby Pearson is.
Yeah. So, Southern Oregon, bass angler, born and raised, hardcore bass junkie growing up in trout country. It was a definite slope to climb coming up, fishing for the greenfish up here in the Pacific Northwest, but I have some great fisheries up here that, fortunately enough, taught me a level of versatility to be successful at a regional level so far, and hopefully further in the future. I love to fish. I've done it my whole life. I started fishing for bass when I was probably 4 or 5 years old. Grew up in a family that was interested in the outdoors, not specifically fishing. So I kind of had to cut my teeth learning on my own, observing and watching. And luckily I was surrounded by family members that afforded me the opportunity to get out on the water, even if it wasn't where their passions lay. When I was about 10, I got into tournament bass club fishing. I'm a huge advocate for club level fishing. One of my best friends' dads, Brett Hansen, got me into fishing a bass club. So I grew up fishing the Rogue Valley Bass Masters and the Klamath Bass Masters and all these different bass clubs. And that was a huge foundation for me. So I owe a lot of credit to the people who afforded me those opportunities to get on the water and compete from a young age. First tournament I ever won was a team tournament with a guy named Mike Ewing. So shout out to him. Then I fished with a guy named Butch Gillum a lot, transitioning one of my great friends, Lou Ferris, right? So I really owe a lot to the people who let me on their boats when I was a kid, 10, 12 years old. Super fortunate, have done it for so long at a lot of levels. I started fishing pro-ams in 2018 and kind of just really pushed myself. There was a point in my career where I had to completely quit fishing because I wanted to fish as a pro so bad. I couldn't afford it. I don't come from a ton of resources. So I always had to kind of troubleshoot obstacles and then slowly, overcome them. The first pro-am I ever fished was in the 1998 Skeeter 185. I only owned one rod and one tackle box. I signed up as a professional, and I had to borrow most of the rods that were in the boat. The next season I fished, I had to borrow my buddy Nathan's 721 Phoenix. I didn't even own a boat. There's so many hurdles. At some points in my career, I had to rent a garage from a guy. I lived on a mattress on the floor. I had a black bag full of clothes, and that was it. And all I wanted to do was talk about fishing, even though I couldn't go. So I pretty much sacrificed everything to get to this point. I built it up from nothing. So if you're out there listening and you want to get into tournament fishing and you don't have the resources, don't let any excuses stand in your way. Just be diligent, work all the time, and I've made it really far, not really asking for much, so everybody who supports me in terms of sponsors and stuff, it's a very organic relationship. You mentioned a little bit at the beginning of the podcast, and I really appreciate it. Like, I really bust my butt on social media and the platform. I'm kind of like the golden retriever of sponsorees where I'll do so much just to be told, attaboy type thing. So shout out to my sponsors. Some of the longest running sponsors I have are like iRod. Matt Newman plucked me out of a crowd when I was probably 13 or 14 years old and asked if I was working with the rod company. Fast forward, I'm 30 years old now, and I've been with them for the better part of 12 to 15 years. Wood Brothers Carpet and Flooring, excellent company, selling carpet and flooring materials in Northern California, based out of Chico. They do so much for the industry, so much for the platforms out west, as well as compete in a lot of the circuits. I think as anglers, we need to take that into consideration when we're trying to pick where we're going to spend our dollar. New partner this year, Discount Tackle, Northwest Oregon-based tackle retailer. I get my orders in a day or two, which is excellent. I'm really kind of pretty ADHD, impatient, all over the place. So to be able to place an order and have it show up on my doorstep within 24 to 48 hours for me is super paramount. They have a great selection. Everything's discounted. So you're already getting the best deal going. Loophole Optics. I've been wearing their sunglasses for probably about 3 to 4 years now. I've got a pair at the bottom of Lake Mojave. I've got a pair at the bottom of the Columbia River. I've been wearing these things everywhere, and sometimes they fly off my head, but they are dang good lenses. Super duper clear. They're a polycarbonate lens that's very scratch resistant. I got away from wearing glass just because I've had a couple pairs shatter for various reasons, and that's kind of always existed in the back of my mind. So Leupold Optics, they have a polycarbonate lens that's tempered. It's very, very strong, very scratch resistant. Phoenix boats, I'm running the 921 Elite 2. It's a fantastic platform to fish off of. It's actually so good, I forget to pay attention to how good it is. People a lot of times ask me, about this or that about my boat, and I'm like, honestly, I haven't even paid attention because I just get to fish all day, and that's all I could ever ask for. I've had boats in the past where that wasn't the opportunity. So really, really love that boat. Very fast, 75 plus mile an hour boat. Excellent. I'm hooked up with Garmin. I run all Garmin. I got two 106s and two 126s. I have the Garmin trolling motor, and I bang that thing off so many trees and logs down at Martinez. I can definitely attest to its durability. Phenomenal product. Swimbait Universe, they've supported me for a couple years. I come from a swimbait culture and background. A lot of my friends are in that industry, so definitely need to thank them for, just having faith that I was going to get there someday. You know what I mean? Wayne, the owner of that's been around in my life since I was a young, 12, 13-year-old kid. So that's really all I could ever ask for. Sly Guy Swim Baits, I'm always working with him on just different custom swim baits, mods, ideas, and things like that to help catch these fish that seem to get a little bit harder and harder to catch pretty much every single year. Cortland lines, like I mentioned, I use their master braid for pretty much most of all my braid. Opportunities and resources, so they're massive. I think that covers most of the basis in terms of sponsorships. I got Wu Tungsten, Mercury, Outboards, things of that nature as well. If you guys want to follow me, I try to be really open with tips, tactics, fishing, fisheries, etc., and I always try to post a couple times a week. You can follow me at Colby Pearson Fishing on Instagram as well as YouTube. Instagram is definitely my most used platform. I do have a Facebook page, Colby Pearson Bass Fishing, and I post on there with consistency as well. I do plan to film every event this year. So I will have a video coming out from the Lake Martinez event down there, and I got some really cool catches on footage down there. So bear with me with my dry personality on videos, but I will hopefully get a little bit more adept at filming myself and expanding upon, the situations that present it on the water. But yeah, that's me in a nutshell. Lifelong bass freak. I've been doing it forever, and I'm going to do it forever. So thanks for listening to my long-winded pitch.
No, that's, it takes all of that anymore to really be out here doing this sport. We're trying so hard out here on the West Coast to get the love that I feel like we probably deserve, but nobody deserves anything. You get it and you work for it and we make it happen. So when that happens, I think the West Coast and the anglers that are out here will get what they should have coming to them, which is some respect and some definite just love from the rest of the community out there. I'd love to start seeing, when we were out there again at Martinez, it's like 50, 60, but I'd love to come to these events and start having 150, 250, 350. We had some really cool things go on when we were out there. If we had a big crowd, it'd be even more. So if you're out there listening right now and you can come out to some of these events and check out these anglers and see what they can do, because it was absolutely impressive to watch them fish. I mean, it was some of the cool stuff, watching them weigh in and all that. And I want to say thanks to Cole because I got to, this is the second angler in a row. My last interview was with the champion from Oroville, Wyatt DeBusk. It was his first time winning a major championship. It's Colby Pearson's first time doing a major championship, and I got to weigh all those fish on stage and announce these guys as champions. And I couldn't be more prouder than to say, Colby, you're the champion now. And thanks for coming on and doing this show. We really appreciate it. And then, thanks for coming out.
Of course, man. Thankful for the opportunity.
No, you'll be back, I'm sure. And all you out there listening, thanks for tuning in. I hope you got as much information out of this as he was ready to drop, and just keep following him out there. And hey, follow the BAM Tour, and you'll see plenty of new anglers. And we'll be back in a couple weeks, and we'll have another great angler on. All right, thanks for coming in.